So ask Deepak why it's not live.
It's okay.
YouTube live not started yet.
That I have
Oh.
told him this.
Should I go ahead with our audience, or
I think you can start.
Yeah, please go ahead, madam.
YouTube is not working.
okay. So I would like to welcome all our guests for today's lecture, and also welcome Professor Prahlad Seth, our eminent speaker today. The importance of environment is known to all of us, and historically, this marked the day as its generation in 1972, when United Nations Assembly established it on the occasion of the first day of Stockholm Conference on Human Environment. So this is a day of...
Madam, 1 second. Madam, can you unmute everybody else? There's so much of background noise. Can somebody unmute everybody else except the president?
I would request everybody to please mute when anyone else is speaking. Right now, the president is speaking, so please mute yourselves.
Okay. So what I was saying is that the importance of this environment is known to all of us, and historically, this marked day has its genesis in 1972, when the United Nations Assembly established it on the occasion of the first day of the Stockholm Conference on Human Environment. In the backdrop of severe damages to the environment, it is the duty of the citizens to make the coming generation conscious. So as INSA's job is to propagate the information, propagate the scientific consciousness to all the to society and to students and to teachers. So we decided to have this particular webinar with Professor Seth speaking about the environment. And I think no, okay. And he will explore the situation that we are in today. And this will be a very educative webinar, I believe. And we are in such a serious situation that maybe in a short time, students will have to go to school with oxygen cylinders. So we cannot now turn back our clock. But we can plant trees, we can make people conscious for using green practices and clean up our rivers and restore the ecosystem. So today's lecture, which is titled as Why Restore the Ecosystem? Safeguarding Environment and Health, to be given by said, and it's a pleasure to introduce him. He was the former director, he's the former director of CSR Institute of Technology Research and founder and CEO of Biotech Park Lucknow. Currently, he is a NASI senior scientist, mentor, and distinguished scientist at Biotech Park Lucknow, and a distinguished scientist of Society of Toxicology. He's an alumnus of Lucknow University and is an outstanding molecular biologist and toxicologist. Professor Seth has made significant contributions to toxicology, neurosciences, biotechnology, and environmental health during the last 4 decades, which are widely recognized nationally and internationally. He brought in concepts of mechanistic toxicology for assessing the risk of toxic substances and the need to identify target molecules specifically with markers of exposure and prediction of adverse effects of chemicals on health. Professor Seth has made important contribution in the environmental health and protection as well, and he served through his involvement with the as a national coordinator of the GEF UNIDO project on persistent organic pollutants and regional coordinator of GEF UNEP project on regionally based assessment of persistent toxic substances, which involved 12 countries. Dr. Seth has been elected fellow of the Collegium International Neuropharmacology, Indian National Science Academy, National Academy of Sciences, and National Academy of Medical Sciences. Now, the awards he got are many. He's a recipient of many awards. So I would like to name a few. This recipient of Rajkrishna Memorial Lecture Award of the Indian Science Congress, Norman Gill Award of Society of Biosciences, Professor B.K. Bachchat Lifetime Achievement Award of Indian Academy of Neurosciences, Toxicology Award of the National Academy of Science in India, P.C. Ray Memorial Award of Indian Science Congress, Lifetime Achievement Award for Contribution to Neuroscience at Neurocon. In November 2018, he has been appointed the chairman of International Life Sciences Institute and member Research and Advisory Committee Life Care Innovations Private Limited and Sriram Institute of Industrial Research. So his CV goes much beyond this, what I said. But at this point of time, I would like to welcome him to the lecture and request him to present our exciting topic. Dr. Singh, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shah, for very kind words. And I thank you and Dr. Nautiyal for giving me an opportunity on this very auspicious day. I call it auspicious because environment is an auspicious thing for us from the ancient Indian times. And to deliver INSA lecture on this very day. When I received the invitation, the first thing came to mind to look at what is the theme of the World Environment Day this year, and I found that it is the ecosystem degradation. And I thought, what will happen if we don't restore the ecosystem, the degradation, and why we should do that? And based on that, I tried to build up my talk, and which I'm going to share with you. I have divided my talk in 3 parts. In first part, very briefly, I'm going to mention that what is the degradation, very briefly, and what are the costs of the degradation, what is the Indian scenario with respect to the degradation, and then talk about what will really that would mean. The second part will talk about what are the impacts of this degradation on the human health and the environment, and how it affects particularly the brain, which is the most important organ. I mean, I don't say the other organs are not important, but the brain is one of the important organs with which I had always an interest. The third part of my talk would take it to what efforts India is doing and what can be done. So this is the more or less the structure of my presentation today, and I would like to my PPT is already on there. So as I mentioned about the ecosystem degradation, it's a global phenomenon. It's not happening only in India or in Europe. It's a global phenomenon. Everywhere the degradation is going on. And what is expected by 2050, about 95% of the Earth's land will be degraded. A huge number. And about 24 billion tons of soil will be eroded by unsustainable agricultural practices. So you see, the agricultural practice is the major contributor for the degradation of the soil. And then there is massive deforestation due to human activities, buildings, taking for the timber, for other sources. The forests are getting the pressure also the land, the agriculture. So the trees are being cut and deforestation is taking place. So our water resources have been also impacted, and we hear every time that the water levels are receding. And when they are receding, they are also unfortunately getting contaminated due to the anthropogenic sources, like example, arsenic, or in some cases, even the fluoride concentration goes up in the well water, and people who are drinking water from such wells, they get sick. The land degradation is one of the leading causes of losses of ecosystem functions such as nutrient cycling is very important, the cycling of the nutrients, the climate regulation. So these functions sustain the life on Earth. Now, just 2 days back, there was news, and it was published in the Nature, that the oxygen is rapidly running low in the Earth's lake. Now, what it means? This means that the lake and the speed by which it is running, it is about 2.75 to 9.3 times what is seen in the oceans. So what it means that all the flora fauna which is in these lakes, that is getting affected. The aquatic organism and the bacteria which are there in the dead ones, the emission of the methane increases, that leads to the greenhouse effects. And that is which is affecting the environment again. And also, very importantly, the human beings which are living their total livelihoods are based on the lake, the fishing activity, the other activities they do, and also for the drinking purposes of water. So this all leads to, again, on adverse impact on the human health. And on the other hand, loss of the biological species because of this presence of this, because of the low oxygen. And if that continues, one will see more and more adverse effects. The Indian scenario is not too good. About 96.3 mega hectares of the land, which accounts to about 29.32% of the total geographical area, is now degraded or converted into desert. The major contributors to the ecosystem degradation are water erosion, deforestation, wind erosion, and saline. So these are the factors which are the major contributors for this degradation. The habitat loss now leads to the loss of biodiversity, the climate change, rural employment, and food insecurity. It has been predicted and estimated that about 449 plant species are endangered, and 5 species have already disappeared. The programs which are taken for the development, and sometimes they become essential, which are being done in the Himalayan region, they pose serious threat to the loss of the endemic species. A lot of people say because of these activities, we are observing the landslides and abnormal behavior of the nature in these parts. But certainly, what is coming to that is a serious threat to the loss of the endemic species. And Mr. M.K. Pandit has called that let us have the nature reserve these Himalayan regions. Now I'm coming to the cost of the eco degradation. The degradation of land and marine eco systems is being system impacts well-being of about 3.2 billion people. It costs about 10% of the annual global production gross product in losses of species and ecosystem services. Ecosystem services, which are essential for food and agriculture, supply of fresh water, protection against hazards, and provision of habitat for species such as fish, pollinators. These are all very important for us, but unfortunately, they are declining. Now, nature is resilient. If it is just left by itself, it regenerates. It has the power to do so. And it has been observed in what we observed in Chernobyl, where a lot of radioactivity was released. that of course humans are not able to live there, but the wildlife has regenerated there. This red fox has been spotted in those regions and many other animals. What we had seen during the lockdown previously, that our rivers had suddenly become clean, our air become clean, the particulate matter went down, and people living in Saharanpur were able to see the glaciers from there. So that is what how the system regenerates. But unfortunately, as the activities started, these things again started to disappear and impacting the air and the water, which I too mentioned. So what are the benefits of the ecosystem restoration? UN Decade of Restoration was announced on March 1, 2019. And that is from 2021 to 2030, that is the decade. And the restoration of 350 mega hectares of degraded terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem could generate $9 trillion in ecosystem services, which is very important, as I mentioned, of the ecosystem services. And let's look at the costing and amount, it becomes $9 trillion. The restoration can also remove 13 to 26 gigatons of the greenhouse gases, which is again not very important. And it also economics benefits exceed 9 times the cost of the investment. The investment which is made is again the economic benefits are very rewarding, goes up to the 9 times. Now, if no action is taken, the inaction is at least 3 times more costly than ecosystem restoration. We had heard about these greenhouses, and if you all remember the ozone hole, which we talked about sometimes in India, a lot of research was done from the National Physical Laboratory, CSIR lab from the Delhi. And this is what is important is, again, if you look at the terms of the restoration of the ecosystem. Now I come to the part that is why it is essential to restore the ecosystem. The healthy soils. We know the importance of soil because it is important to sustain the life on earth. Because again, food system depends on healthy soils. The revival of the degraded soil, when we revive, it revives the plants, it revives the crops, it revives the forest, it restores the fungi, the bacteria, the viruses, and which are all related to the growth of the plant. There is a complex relationship, a network, and that is towards the growth of the plants. Now, the relationship with the nature is faulty. And I would like to mention about this. That is the people's relationship. It is acceptance of how the nature is. That is very important. Now, people are losing that because with what is needed is that enjoying, appreciating the trees, the flowers, the butterflies, which are there. But this is all because of degradation. This is all halting. And there is a connection that if we don't respect, we don't get the idea of protecting. I remember in my childhood times, there was a small area in backyard of their house where my father told me this plant was planted by your aunt, this was planted by your grandmother, this was planted by someone of the relatives. So what was showing that a sense of responsibility, sense of the feeling for the nature comes there, and you then value the nature and protect it. We lost just on May 21, Mr. Sundarlal Bahuguna, who was again the relationship which he taught to the women with there, and they came up with the Chipko movement. And that is what is important to learn that. Of course, traditionally, again, I mean, the relationship in India, the worship for the plants and the worshipping the banyan tree once a year, the women do all over, and the banana tree, these are all worshipped, and that relationship is very important with the human being. Another important which are being lost out is the indigenous culture and knowledge. That is, our traditional ecological knowledge is being lost because the language, the culture, which are in a particular habitat, if the destruction of that habitat takes place, that is lost. The traditional knowledge of about the economic plants which are growing there, the medicines which are traditional, from which the medicines are obtained, they are being lost. And this knowledge of the traditional importance, how they were living there, that and the culture is being lost, which is again impacting. So this is happening, and this is again a loss which is occurring to our culture and knowledge. Because if you go with the modernization, this culture has been lost. People have lost the knowledge about being what are the important parts, what of the plant parts, what are the important plants which are being used for the medicine, and likewise. The next part which I want to discuss, and I think that is the last part with respect to the ecosystem degradation, is the healthy ecosystem for human health. The COVID-19 pandemic is a reminder of how ecosystem degradation leads to emergence and spread of novel pathogens. Restoring environmental microbiome through revegetation positively impacts our immune system. So how important is this? The microbiome, for which we have to see our soils are healthy, our plants are healthy, and the environment supports that. And that is very important. Again, we have learned for the impact, the importance of the human immune system, we have learned during the COVID. It has become a household talk now that, oh, if your immune system is weak, then you're going to get more infected. Then the increasing chemical pollutants in the ecosystem are causing great damage to the health. Now, these chemical pollutants are, many times you hear about the lead, that is a metal, then the chemicals which are carcinogenic. These are all impacting the human health. So very quickly, this cartoon shows that sources of the pollution on human health, which impact the human health, are the air pollution, and which have particulate matters, and they can do the go to the brain, nerve damage. The example is lead, the carbon monoxide, ozone, and these and the volatile organic compounds, which they all affect the various parts of the body. The second is this water pollution, which we have been talking about, from where the bacteria, parasites, and chemicals come and impact the various systems of the body. The soil pollution, mostly the pesticides and other chemicals which are come up through the runoff from the soils, and again impact the brain and the skin and other organs of the body, leading even to the cancer risk. And so these are, I just illustrated that what are the pollutants and how they can get into the system and impact on human health. Air pollution. Now, about 7 of the world's 10 most polluted cities are in India. And the Gurgaon, where I'm living at present, is the number 1. This has not changed much. The city has the highest concentration of PM, 2.5, that is a particulate matter size of the 2.5, and a pollutant that can it can deeply enter into the, very quickly enter the lungs and the biostreams of the human system. Now, of course, during the pandemic time, the levels have come down, but we have learned as soon as the activity resumes, these things are there. The stubble burning, again, cost Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, about the loss of about 2 lakh crores every year. And this burning is residues for the farmers in Haryana and Punjab. And this contribute to the Delhi's air. There's a lot of debate about it, where it's coming from, and people, because of from their own side, which side they're on the debate, they say, no, it is not there, it is being generated by some other source. But the fact is this, their air gets polluted because of this activity. DBT and ICR have taken steps to find out the technologies which can help it, but they will be useful only when they become cost effective and are affordable. So it has to go a long way, but certainly these technologies have to be found. The other aspect is the household air pollution. This is again the world's leading environmental health risk. A lot of studies have been done from Chennai in India also, and in association with Dr. Crick Smith and the World Bank projects. And these have become, they arise because in a closed environment, cooking a meal, lighting a lamp, or even heating a room, this becomes there. I'll just mention about one, the arsenic toxicity, which is very, very talked about. And in West Bengal, about 4,508 habitation in 17 blocks are affected. It's not now confined to West Bengal. It's getting to other states, which are Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Assam, Tripura, and there are about 1,659 habitation. Recently, concentration of arsenic above the permissible limits have been reported in the groundwater in 30 districts of Uttar Pradesh, including Lucknow. So it is alarming, and more efforts are being found to confirm that kind of the data and see. I would like to point out here that CSIR launched a program on toxicogenomics, and which I had the opportunity to head and steer that program. And our lab in Calcutta, IICB, Dr. Giri made a lot of studies, and he showed that there is a aspect of the genetic factors, that the people may be having a higher level of arsenic, but they're still not showing any symptoms. And the opposite, that people have very low level or not detectable level, but still showing the symptoms. And then he showed very by the basic studies that it is because the conversion of the arsenic to the more toxic form, which is very important for the exhibiting the toxic symptoms. I'll not go into the details of that, but what I just wanted found, because a lot of young people, I hope they are attending, that here the metabolism of the metal is important. The Minamata disease, it happened in 1956, and this showed a neurological syndrome which was caused by mercury. And mercury, because in the fish, gets converted into methyl mercury, which is more toxic, and it produces a lot of the toxic symptoms, and which includes numbness in the hands, feet, and weakness, and narrowing of the field vision, damage to the hearing, and likewise. The most important is this, that it causes also affected the fetuses in the womb. I'll come to that later on, a little later. And this was first discovered in Minamata cities in Japan, 1956. and was caused by the release of the methyl mercury in the industrial wastewater, which I already mentioned. So this Minamata disease and Itai disease, which is Itai is caused by the cadmium, and Minamata because of the manganese, they have become in toxicology now so important. They are now present in the toxicology handbooks and toxicology textbooks. So who's at risk? The blood mercury levels are strongly correlated with the fish consumption. That has been shown. The levels are higher in ethnic groups that eat more fish, that is Native Americans, Asian, Pacific Islanders. Levels are higher among those with higher incomes because they could afford, and levels are higher among those who live on the coast. So it shows a relationship with the presence of the fish. And I'll talk about the environmental chemicals very briefly. This is not the total list of the environmental chemicals. It is just a representative list, which is all we hear every day now: lead, methyl mercury, polychlorated biphenyls, arsenic, toluene, manganese, fluoride, chlorophylls, polybrominated diphenyl ethers, bisphenol, and phthalate. So exposure, again, a relationship, people said whether it is the environment doing it or whether it is the gene doing or not. So a twin study was carried out in 2004, and where it was shown that people living in the polluted area, the twins, people living in the polluted area, they were more affected of the environment. They showed more toxic effects. So it was not related to the gene, it was related to the exposure to the environmental pollutants. These environmental hazards are responsible for about 25% of the total burden of the disease worldwide, and as much as 30% in regions such as Sub-Sahara, as Sub-Saharan Africa. As many as 13 million deaths can be prevented every year by making our environment healthier. So this is again related to the ecosystem restoration. Is another benefit, which is that you can prevent as much as 30 million deaths if you are able to make your environment healthier. Sorry about that. The air pollution level dangerously high in many parts of the world. 9 out of the 10 people breathe air containing high levels of pollutants, and 7 million people die every year, and diseases such as stroke, heart disease, lung cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, and respiratory infections. About 4.2 million deaths because of the outdoor pollution, 3.8 million deaths household pollution. Of an example I gave, the cooking inside the rooms, and 91% of population lives with air quality that exceeds WHO guidelines. The pesticides, if you look at, these are the number of the pesticides which were being used, some of them used in the household also, and these have different impacts, and I'll come to that very soon. The chronic neurological effects of pesticides, the organophosphates, it is caused the increase in the vibration sensitivity, sensor neuropathy, cognitive effects, deficits, the methyl bromide olfactory cognitive effects, fluoride behavioral deficit, paracord and others, Parkinson's disease, and others. Now, you may be remembering in the in late 1990s that there has been a very new, several news items were there that in Kasargod, a large number of people have been infected by the endosulfan. What has actually happened that to preserve the cashew plantation, aerial spray of the endosulfan was done. Now, aerial spray was done without taking the cognizance of the environmental structure over there. That is, means the there were the valleys there, the hills from both the sides, and the very deep valley where the water was flowing. So when these planes were used for spraying of the endosulfan, and what happened? The water, pesticide, endosulfan got collected and concentrated there, which affected the people. So here again, example of the local action, how the people themselves take an action. The resident of Parade, that was the village, they moved to the Kerala High Court and they obtained, requested for the ban, and the High Court banned the use of endosulfan in the state of Kerala. And so much so, then it was currently a study is going on to really assess what is the impact of the pesticide, not only endosulfan, on the pesticide. Endosulfan has been banned. The other pesticides on human health, which I am coordinating at the ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research. So based on this, High Court asked NIH to study it. NIH is the National Institute of Occupational Health of the ICMR, located in Ahmedabad. And they indicated that endosulfan is the cause for a number of health problems among school children living in exposed area. These children had significantly lower intelligence level than the control group, and also a very high incidence of various sexual disorders. I'm coming, as I said, that I would like to talk about the impacts on the children and particularly the brain. So these are the environmental disasters. In early 1900s, the lead poisoning epidemic took place in Queensland, Australia. The children exhibited anemia, paralysis of the lower limbs, and blindness, and many children died. In 1950s, in a Japanese fishing village in Minamata Bay, about which I just mentioned, children born to mothers who ingested methyl mercury contaminated fish exhibited severe motor dysfunction and mental retardation. In 1959, in Japan, the ingestion of the arsenic contaminated powdered milk by children resulted in more than 12,000 cases of arsenic poisoning and were 10 times more likely to be mentally retarded as compared with national rates. In 1968 in Japan and 1979 in Taiwan, ingestion of polychlorinated biphenyl contaminated rice bran oil by pregnant women led to fetal wasting and cola-colored dull children. Even the children which were born, they thought they were having the dull color. And these epidemics serve as a warning that environmental toxin can adversely impact of retarded brain development. So UNICEF has appealed, and that is this cartoon mentioned. This is that impact of the air pollution on developing brain and danger, that is a danger in the air. See, a lot of time air pollution has been thought that it only affects the lung, the first way, and then it may be affecting other organs. But more and more data is now coming that air pollution is impacting the brain and the developing brain particularly. But not only that, it also affects the adult brain. A lot of studies have done with the traffic police people, and they have been shown that a lot of mental, diverse type of the mental disabilities have been observed. So it has been also found that the chemicals are really present and exposure to children can take place, and that is the environmental chemicals in human breast milk and placenta, Then cord blood, about 257 chemicals. That's a study from Europe. The cord blood, you all know the cord blood. It has 137 chemicals. 132 causes cancer, and 133 causes developmental and reproductive abnormalities. So this is a report from the Environmental Defense Canada in 2017. So the health impacts more evident in pediatrics overtaken the infectious disease. But the pediatric reports have been taken over what is the more than the infectious disease. Now, here are let us see what it here it says. And let me explain what is this endocrine disrupting chemicals are. The chemicals who have a structure similar to our hormones, that is what becomes the endocrine. So having similar structures, so they have the ability to mimic the hormone and produce a lot of the adverse effect. And all of these which are written here, the chlorophos, which is the, and DDT, the polychlorated biphenyls, lead, tetrachloroethylene, ethyl mercury, etc. These are all bisphenol A, and phthalate, which have been a lot of in talks because of the possibility of releasing from the phthalate bottles, but that is wrong, because phthalate, tetraphthalate is not phthalate. It is just a name which has been made by, and this because it's not the phthalate which is present there. Phthalate has not been used as plasticizer, so it won't come out and effect. So these produce a lot of effects on the body. Just very briefly, these include variety of neurological disorders. About 10 to 15% births are affected by neurodevelopmental disorders. Worldwide increase in rate of autism, spectrum disorder, the attention deficit hyperactive disorders, and which is ADHD. And these diseases, as I mentioned, those disasters, environmental disasters in the early years. Now, these are the decades, these are the diseases of the present decades in which a lot of children are being reported to having autism spectrum disorders and attention deficit syndrome. The decline in subclinical brain function is more common than neurobehavioral disorders. So, in spite of the gross, instead of the gross neurobehavioral disorder, there is a subclinical brain function. That means very, very small levels are altering the brain function. Now, this may be not very easily visible. May I try to increase? Can you see it better now? Okay. So here, don't stress too much. The importance is this, that the development of the brain, the neuronal, takes place during from the conception to the adulthood, that is up to the adolescence, that is up to the age of 16, 17 years. It continues to grow. So the early gestational exposure, say from the 4 weeks and up to the 32 weeks, it is the proliferation and the migration of the nervous system, neurons. Then later period, it is the differentiation and synaptogenesis. I'll not, but what I try to highlight is this, that various parts of the cells develop and functions take place during a period. So the brain development period is that strong. And I would like to point out that sensory pathways, like vision, hearing, they develop from about 20 weeks of the gestation and going up to 6 years of the age. The language is again somewhere around 20 weeks of the gestation and grows about again 6 years of the age. So this cognitive functions again develop, but they continue up to the age of 16 years, 17 years. So this is what's very, very important to know. If any exposure by chemical, nutrition, or other aspect takes place during this development, the pregnant mother gets exposed to this, they can severely impact the development, brain development and functions of the child. I hope this is more clear. And what is here, I have tried to define and taken the pesticide as example, but this can be other also, like other chemicals can also be impacting. But I have taken the example of the pesticides and see that during the prenatal period, that is now here it is months, that was the gestation was the weeks. And the postnatal period, that's again in years. So if you see the window between the 3 to almost up to the birth time, the exposure if takes place to pesticide, low birth weight, short body length, congenital deformities, and fetal deaths are observed. Now, if this is, now you see the red one, around the same time, but up to the, after the birth, up to 5 years, you see the children show, the born children, attention deficit hyperactivity syndrome disorder, which I mentioned earlier, autism, dyslexia, lower IQ, cerebral palsy. Now, if this is, I see the last one, starting this after this is a postnatal period, somewhere about close to 2 years of age and going up to 16 and a half years almost. Now, if exposure occurs to the chemical or again environmental influences, you have impaired higher cognitive function, working memory, verbal execution, and speech processing, motor functions, and executive functions. These are impacted. So this is, I tried to mention that how these things are occurring and how important is the time of exposure. So many times, if the drug or the new chemical which is being coming into the market is not tested, keeping in these things in the mind, one can get very, very adverse effect. We have not forgetting the thalidomide incidents which occurred because the testing was not done in the whole period. There was only after the gestation period was done. So what are the dimensions of the risk? The pre or perinatal exposure may exert lifetime adverse consequences. Alterations are often reversible. Effects become visible at later stages of life. And then when the child is born, you may not see it. But as the child grows and its physiological functions matures, you find more of the differences. The exposed population may become more susceptible to infections and other chemicals. Now, why children are more vulnerable? Because they have much larger surface area relative to body weight, and newborn infants have 2 times more higher. The higher rate of metabolism and extra metabolic energy, the greater requirement of oxygen and food on per kg basis, the higher breathing rate and food consumption leads to higher relative exposure to chemicals, and the hand-to-mouth experience. The hand-to-mouth experience we have seen with every child in the family, that as the toddler grows up, anything which he wants, he touches it and he takes it to the mouth. That is how he discovers that what that thing is. Now I come to the part, what is the impact on health in terms of the economics? The criteria pollutant related to illness above cost about $250 billion annually. Excess deaths related to the air pollution is estimated at 50,000 to 100,000 per year. Excess lifetime cancer risk related to the air pollution is estimated to be 14,000 per million persons. The poor indoor quality costs tens of billions of dollars per year due to lost productivity, direct medical cost, and damage to equipment and materials. How is the economics when you look at the pollution cost and preventative economics? And here, the studies have been carried out by CSR laboratory NERI, which I'm using. The human health damage cost due to air pollution alone is about 1,168 million per year, and the vegetation product loss is rupees 321 million per year. The productive loss in low and middle income country reduced GDP by 2%. Middle income, the healthcare cost about $4.6 trillion per year. Air quality control measures reduce deaths and cardiovascular disorders, respiratory disorders. So if those measures are taken, you see the benefit to the health. The economic gains, and this is from a US study, US dollar 30 is benefits is returned to the economy for every dollar since 1970 spent. So total benefit comes to $65 billion. So for the every dollar, you get so much of the recovery. Removal of lead from gasoline, US dollar 200 is economic recovery since 1980. Total bucks to $6 trillion. Removal of lead, again, as I mentioned, it shows to such an important recovery. In India, the Ujjwala Yojana about the LPG connections, now this is an old figure, much more than that, 3.6 crore LPG connections have been provided. And I'm sure if you look at it in terms of the benefits, it will be enormous amount of the money. Okay, so the restoration, eco-restoration is linked to the sustainable goals, sustainable environmental goals, and to not all the goals, most of the sustainable the goals, and these are the number one, that is the no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being. Number 5, gender equality. Number 6, clean water and sanitation. So likewise, these are connected with the various sustainable development goals. So it is important for the preservation of the degraded lands, and the regeneration of the ecosystem is connected with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, again, I think this may not be, but these are the approaches which one can use, and this is the, again, taking into the account of the our own country. That is what steps have been taken. The government, that is the National Water Mission, Drinking Water Mission, Clean Ganga Mission, the biofuel policy, the agroforestry policy, and so different afforestation policy. These are all contributing to the social mobilization, capacity building, cost effectiveness innovation, and climate mitigation absorption. So the ecosystem restoration and biodiversity conservation outcomes, as I was reading out, are many, and these can then impact the our various policies, housing for all, the rural, terrestrial, and then these can again lead to the enabling conditions, effective government institutional involvement, supply chain, and multi-sector actions alignment. Now, the what is trying to these various approaches can be used, and some of it have started, and they can help in the restoration of the ecosystem and conservation of the biodiversity, which has been impacted by this ecosystem degradation. So our country is also moving to attain the sustainable development goals. And as I stated earlier, right from the ancient Indian time, that we had the worshipping of the plants, and in the Vedic culture, it was defined that the forest, the water, the other planet materials are important, and they were worshipped. Anybody cutting the trees was punished at that time. But that has continued even that time. Now it is the 50th year. 50 years we have been celebrating the World Environment Day, and the India's Prime Minister, who attended the 1972 Stockholm Convention, made pledges, and that continues for the cleaning the environment, and that continues even to the present Prime Minister, Modi, who in 2015 announced to build capacity to produce 175 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030, when the existing capacity was only 39 gigawatt. Many people felt that it's impossible, how it can be done. But today, the installed capacity is 89 gigawatt, and this will meet the target. The Prime Minister also committed to increase power generation capacity without the use of fossil fuel to 40% by 2020. The capacity already has reached 38, and the country will definitely reach this target. And as stated by Amitabh Kant, the CEO of the Niti Aayog. Then he also committed reduce carbon emissions by 30 to 35% from the 2000 levels by 2030. India appears to reduce this by not only 30-35, but 45% by 2030. That is surpassing the Paris target, which was made. So I think it will be a note for all of us that the country is also moving into attaining the sustainable development goals, and all these actions will help in getting a cleaner and a healthier environment. So to conclude, over the years, the ecosystem has been severely degraded, which has impacted biodiversity in India. Also, a significant ecosystem degradation in form of desertification of land, deforestation, loss of water resources, etc., is being observed. India, like other countries, has taken several important steps. Example, renewable energy, phasing out of use of coal, that's the fossil fuel, etc. The COVID-19 is a sad reminder that how ecosystem degradation can lead to emergence and spread of pathogens. Ecosystem restoration has a close link with human health. A number of a large number of environmental chemicals have entered into air, water, and soil, and through there have reached into the human beings and impacted the health. Impact of chemicals on developing brain is of major concern. Exposure of developing brain in children has now shown to cause dyslexia, ADHD, that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorders, autism, a new set of morbidities of the current decade. So there is a need to take urgent and sincere step to restore the ecosystem. All stakeholders, government, academia, scientists, and public health should be involved in restoration of the ecosystem. Restoration of ecosystem is essential for the survival of the mankind. Further delay cannot be afforded. So with this, I thank for your attention, and I hope I have not exceeded my allotted time. And once again, I thank Dr. Shaha and Dr. Nautiyal for giving an opportunity, and I also thank the Nasi headquarter people. I saw the A.K. Srivastava was sitting there, and also the Deepak, who is providing the technical help. And I see my friend Dr. Anil Rastogi sitting, and I thank him for his time. I also noted my daughter Ritu Bhalla from Singapore and my son Pankaj. They were all attending. I thank all the participants who attended this talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Said, for this wonderful presentation where you talked about different kinds of pollutions and how it's important to bring back our ecosystem to its normal conditions. You have talked about the pollution caused by mercury, how it's selective. And interestingly, this is a kind of a reverse selection because it affects the affluent people more. And it also affects the people who are living in the coastal areas or who take more fish. And you have told us about how 95% of the land will be troubled by the year 2050 because of these changes. And you have also brought to our knowledge how the neuro problems will increase because of the pollution, be it because of various toxic materials in the soil, in water, or because of the organic material. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. And there are some questions, and I request you to please address them. Dr. Seema Mandal, please read out the questions. There are quite a few people who have joined us, not on the WebEx, but on the YouTube. So if anyone of them also wants to ask questions, most welcome. Meanwhile, Dr. Seema Mandal, please.
We have received two questions in that WebEx. The first one from Vijaya Amohanan K. Pillai. The question is, does this costing for restoration include any carbon tax component?
Does the restoration
include any carbon tax component? Carbon tax.
Yeah, sure. Carbon the carbon footprints, if you restore, that will be reduced because all these deforestation activities or the land degradation leads to the carbon footprints, more of the carbon generation which is taking place. So if you have good forest, good vegetation, that helps you in taking the carbon.
Thank you. And another suggestion is there from Tapan Acha. Single-use plastic are one of the most important effectors of ecosystem degradation, and effective efforts have not been made to restrict microplastics. This requires due attention.
Yeah, microplastic, I did not touch it because of so many things. This is, of course, it is raising in our oceans. We are finding the aggregation of the microplastics there. And so that is really a cause of concern. I thank Dr. Adaya for pointing it out for the audience, and they will also know about it. So the microplastic is really one of the major concerns.
Thank you. And another one is from Vijayamohan Pillai again. Renewable energy target is 450 GW, not 175 GW.
Yeah, Dr. Said, can I just clarify a few minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have given a very excellent talk. The 175 target was put almost, 2 years back. And now looking at our accomplishments in solar energy and wind energy, we have done so well that the next meeting, they have put a much better target, 450 gigawatt by 2030. And there are reasons that we will be able to accomplish it. It's not 175, so I thought I would just mention that.
Okay, thank you. So new target has been set up much higher than that.
Absolutely, 450 and 200 would be solar. Almost 100 would be wind, and we are almost going to touch it. Of course, forget about the pandemics aspects. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
I'm not very sure if the target has been achieved to the level you mentioned. I'll check it again. But actually, the target was set very high, and we were not able to achieve that. So, in fact, it was downgraded afterwards. But I'll also again check, and you also please check. There is one comment in the YouTube. Dr. Govinder Singh Kochhar, he wishes happy Environment Day to all of us, and he says, let's to make our environment healthy for ourselves and for our future generations. Thank you very much for this wonderful suggestion. And if there are any other questions somebody wants to ask, please feel free.
Can I ask?
Yeah,
please.
Yeah. Yes. Professor, I just wanted to have your comments on this net zero policy. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, or should I?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this net zero policy of the Western countries are telling us to reduce our emissions. And while they have had plenty of emissions in the past, which has caused a lot of damage. So how should India go about? Because for our own growth and for our development, we would need a minimal kind of emission. So what do you think what should be our policy in this?
Our Prime Minister has already mentioned about the emission, and he has made that the policy is to reduce the emissions. And what he gave about 2 years back, the target that they will reduce up to 30 to 35% the levels which we had in 2005. Now, as things are going on, the emissions have reduced significantly already. So it looks like. So what you ask is that, yes, we cannot really afford to have going on the emission. So emission has to be reduced, and it's not because of the pressure of these Western world. I think it's realization of the impacts on our own health. So I think the need is to reduce the emissions, and the problem is this, that still we are dependent on the coal for our energy. So which is leading the major cause. So bearing that is why we are shifting more from the coal energy, which is still about 80% of the total energy generation methods. But we are moving toward fast to the solar energy, the renewable energy part, which is going on. So I think we have to draw a balance between that and phase out as much as possible the fossil fuel use.
Thank you.
Thank you for answering that. I have a very general comment. When we talk of environment, we talk as if development should not take place. And when we talk of development, we totally ignore the environment. For example, somebody started saying that we should use neem ki daton for brushing our teeth. I was just wondering if 1 billion Indians start breaking one branch of neem twig from the tree, how many trees would be ultimately left? So on one hand, we talk of these things, we talk of Ayurveda and herbal drugs and so on, but we also know that they are getting more and more scarce even at high altitude. How do you hit a balance between these increasing requirement, for example, for the herbal product and the scarcity of them?
I think the dictum that if you take a tree or a plant, you plant another tree or the plant. So I think that has to follow, whether it is for the Ayurvedic purposes or for any purposes. We should the replantation and regeneration, I think, is very important. So the use of the plants, I think, is essential. That will go on, but at the same time, we should go on planting and I'm not talking of the planting what is done in our Vraksharopan. that is something different going on. But I think all these plants which are useful for us, the medicinal plant, if we're using more and more plants should be planted. So that is only we can have the balance.
Any other questions from anybody from the audience?
Yeah, Dr. Nautiyal, I would like to ask one more question to Dr. Seth.
Yeah.
Please introduce yourself and
Yeah, I am Professor Pillai. Dr. Seth, you have rightly touched upon the problem of arsenic, our environmental degradation. My question is that, last 30 years, this arsenic problem is there in our country. Many CSIR labs, including IITR, NERI, CGCRI, IACB, they all have worked on that, and even WHO sponsored several programs. Why is it that we didn't have any national program to eradicate this arsenic poisoning? 30 years, 35 years, still going on. Still a lot of work is going on. So in your opinion, what is it that we could have done to make a big impact or big change in our country?
The problem of the arsenic as it started was very restricted belt of the West Bengal. Then the internal water channels now, that is in the Indo-Gangetic plains, and more states are becoming there. So the problem is not, this is a natural phenomena which is happening. So to do that, we are the labs are collaborating. The geophysiological laboratory NGRI at Hyderabad. They are doing a lot of studies now and seeing how we can take the aquifers and make a kind of the management so that it doesn't enter into the others. But that's an enormous task. The second part is this, that wherever arsenic poisoning is there, how you can remove the arsenic and provide the water which is clean. So the very first step was done, diluted. So if you have contaminated arsenic contaminated water, add more natural water, you dilute it. So you can do that. The second aspect was develop the technologies. Now in afternoon we have another webinar of NASI where very distinguished Professor Pradeep is going to talk about the various new technologies which he has developed with the nanochemistry based for the removal of the arsenic. And this he named this technology as Amrit. Now, which is after a number of the field trials, it is in use now in certain parts which are heavily infected by arsenic. So I think the CSR labs, there has been a program on the groundwater aspect. I remember when I was heading the IITR, which was called as ITRC at that time, we had a program with the NGRI, IRI, IITR, and I think one more laboratory was involved. In the toxicogenomics part, which we again was rated, as I mentioned, from the study of the arsenic, the IIGB, TCMB, IITR, and IICB were involved. So we had national programs, but what you said exactly, that kind of the national program was not there.
Yeah, sir, because Pradeep's work is only a rice variety which enriches arsenic in the type of a rice. That is not going to solve our problem. It only can see, you can detect arsenic, separate arsenic, dilution will not have, but CGCRI made some bricks which will take a lot of arsenic and then we could remove it. I don't know what happened to the technology. Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Nautiyal, can I?
please introduce yourself, Dr. Strand.
I'm Dr. Narendra Mehrotra from Lucknow. One response to the issue raised by Dr. Nautiyal about medicinal plantation and so on, there is this National Medicinal Plant Board, which has taken up the task of large-scale campaign of cultivation of useful medicinal plants across the country, and a lot of work is being done. That was just a piece of information I wanted to share. The other is the role of the industry as a lobby in influencing not only agriculture, but also the use of the unwanted pesticides or the pesticides with known side effects. Toxate also knows that the way several pesticides and insecticides, which are banned elsewhere in the world, for various reasons, many of them are still continuing to be used here. And the way industry has converted conventional agriculture into industrial agriculture. And industrial agriculture can only be done by promoting the excess use of the fertilizers and all these chemicals, which does influence the environment very largely. Now, I would not go into the question of the output and the whether we'll be able to support this huge population without the use of chemicals is a matter of debate, and that can be taken up elsewhere. But I have fair amount of data that it can be managed with an integrated nutrient management and pest management involving the organic or the other methods which can be used. Over. Thank you.
Can I just react to Dr. Mehrotra? I think what he has pointed out is very important. The integrated pest management approach which is being taking place, where they are carrying out, and more organic farming is being promoted. But still the cost of the organic produce vis-a-vis other, because people still go by economy, their household. So only very few people who are enlightened, they go for the organic farming produces. But your other question was about the pesticide which is being used for agriculture purposes. India has banned all those pesticides which are also banned in other countries. Only some of the DDT was permitted because of the vector control, malaria control, and that is only very restricted amount was allowed to produce, and otherwise for agriculture practices DDT and all the chlorinated hydrocarbons are banned.
There are two other questions which people have asked on the YouTube. The first question is by Dr. P.N. Thakkar, who asks, role of selenium toxicity on human and animal health.
What is the question again? That
Role of selenium toxicity.
Selenium.
On human and animal health.
Selenium toxicity has been very limited studies are available, and both in the animals and humans, they have been done. And what has been found is I don't exactly remember, it is replacing some of the elements which are important, and because of that replacement, it is becoming, its high concentration becomes toxic. Otherwise, selenium, as you know, has been used as the antioxidant, and it has been thought to be. But all these things which are at low levels, they are beneficial. At higher level, they become toxic. That much I can comment at this.
There is one more question which is related to COVID actually. The question is from Dr. M.C. Srinivasan. He wants to know what effect environmental pollutants have on the microflora. That's the first part of the question. What effect environmental pollutants have on the microflora? Can the origin of mucormycosis be due to the mutation in the saprophytic nuclease to become human pathogen?
So I didn't get the total question very clearly. The first part was,
what effect environmental pollutants have on the microflora?
Microflora. So that's not related to the COVID, right?
This part is not related to COVID, right?
Okay. So microflora, as I mentioned, because they are present in our land, the soil, they are present down in the aquatic water. So these are impacted. The microflora is impacted by the heavy metals, by the pesticides, and by other toxic chemicals. So that's the first part. Second part?
The origin of mucormycosis be due to mutation in the saprophytic nuclease to become human pathogenic. Origin of mucormycosis can it be due to mutation in the saprophytic nuclease?
I cannot comment on that because I'm not have studied that. But the whole thing which is more related to the person's own immune function. It has been found that people who have compromised immune system, they are more prone to get this. And people have also alleged that it is the steroids use which is connected. But on the other hand, those people with the treating the patients for arthritis, others, they said we have used steroids for long time. But the ultimate matter is that a weak immune system will lead to this growth of this the microorganism, that is a fungus, and that is why it finds the culprit among those people, and you will see mostly occurring people who are in the hospitals, and that's how the fungus came.
So thank you very much for addressing these queries. And as we move towards the end of this program, I would invite Dr. Seema Mantal to propose the vote of thanks.
Before Seema talks, let me thank her also. I forgot to take her name.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sheth, for this important and informative talk on World Environment Day. We are honored and feel enriched. All the viewers are definitely benefited and got timely awareness to protect our ecosystem by safeguarding our environment. I sincerely thank President INSA, Professor Chandrima Saha, for her valuable guidance and kind support for conducting this webinar. I am thankful to Dr. Arora, Senior Consultant, Mr. Jokarkar, DED, and Dr. Notial, Consultant Science Communication INSA, for their kind support. My sincere thanks to Dr. Neeraj Kumar, Executive Secretary, and Mr. Deepak Verma of NASI for their kind help. I wish to thank the National Academy of Sciences India, NASI, for providing us support and help to make this webinar successful. Thank you.
This we bid goodbye with a word of thanks to all the people who tuned in to listen to this program. INSA will keep conducting such programs in future also, despite the pandemic, and we'll keep you informed. In case you have any queries and you want to be on the mailing list, please write to the Executive Director, INSA. Thank you so much. Take care. Namaskar.